Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm doing so fantastically because I've just got a rhythm in my heart. I've just got a skip in my step, I'm just...
Oh, you found a treasure called rhythm.
Oh my god. Oh man, there's something in my heart. It's right there, and it is that. And I'm smiling from ear to ear because I'm seeing an old friend again. Not just you, Bartek. I see you each week. It's not as special. But I saw two familiar faces in the movie we watched for this episode, and I was just so delighted. I was like, "Yay!" One I knew was coming in, and one I was shocked to see.
We're getting really into it. Yeah, it's a Bartek pick this week, but in a way, it's a pick for Ryan.
In a way, it's a pick for everyone.
But what is this? What are we doing?
We are doing our podcast, Pictures Powwow, in which we sit down and discuss a film that has come recommended. You recommended the movie this week. Next week, it will be me. And then the next episode, it's the listening people. So at the end of this episode, I'll say my selection. Everyone, you make sure to go watch it, and then we'll discuss it next time, and so on. And yes, you, the listening people, can make suggestions. We add them to the list. If it's a movie and we can find a copy of it, we'll get around to it and watch it. I mean, we've had a bunch of foreign film recommendations, and we sat down a week or two ago now, Bartek did, and made sure to find copies where we could actually watch them. It's like, okay, these have subtitles, these are this is this. And so I'm excited about all of the potentials that you, the listening people, can suggest our way, but also what we do with each other, because Bartek, you've gone out of your way this year. You've given us more than one Indian film to watch.
That's right, Ryan. You very deliberately at the end of last year said that next year, referring to this year, which is 2024 for future people, is the year of the musical for Spit and Polish Presents, and so we will have some sort of bias or a compulsion to pick more musical films. And I think I said at the end of the last episode, like, well, I already pick a Bollywood film every year, so the year of the musical version of that habit should be to pick a second one.
That's correct. And what was the film you selected for us all to engage with today?
Yep, so it's a film that, I saw in cinemas forever ago, and I just could not remember the title. Even when I'd look it up, it would very quickly fall from me. But I've alluded to it many times. Like, oh, don't worry, Ryan, we'll do another Salman Khan film at some point. There are two that I've seen in cinema. We'll do the other one at some point. And that is the one that we are doing today. We are doing, let's see if I can do it without looking it up, Prem Ratan Dhan Payo?
He's looking it up to double check if he got
Yes,
it.
Prem Ratan Dhan Payo. The thing that keeps tripping me up is Dhan Payo. I keep saying Pan Dayo.
Oh, and what does that translate to roughly?
Yep, so the one that I said last week, which is based on the translation on the Wikipedia page, was I found a jewel called love, but the subtitles that we watched said treasure.
Yes.
Yeah. So
but rough idea is the same.
You found something valuable called love.
And this is a very important film. It's from 2015, if I'm not mistaken, which is the same year as the other Salman Khan movie we did. Is that correct? Is Sultan came out in 2015 as well?
Yeah, maybe. I definitely saw this one first. So, yeah, I kept thinking it was 2016, but maybe it just was released in Australia a year later. But it's definitely either 2015, 2016. Definitely May 2015.
And Salman Khan, for those not in the know, is one of the big Indian actors. He is one of the three Khans, isn't that right?
Yep, we've covered all three Khans at this point at least once. This is Salman Khan's second time.
Yes, and you were correct. 2016 was Sultan. It was quickly after this film. So it was this film and then Sultan, roughly around the same period of time. Yeah, that sounds right.
I thought they were both 2016, but yeah, at least I was right about Sultan.
No, this one is 2015, and then the one after it is Sultan. So we did this and then Sultan, back to back, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So
those are the two of his leading films that I've seen.
But there are the three Khans of India. Of course, there's many actual people with Khan in their name in India, but they're the three big ones, and we have talked about the biggest of them all, of course, Shah Rukh Khan, many times over on this podcast.
I've had to stop myself from picking Shah Rukh Khan films when I do Bollywood.
He's the one that's everyone's go-to, but I personally liked the one we're talking about today, Salman Khan. We covered back a while
It
ago
was the
now
second Bollywood film I ever recommended.
Sultan, which is a wrestling movie, but oh, it's so much more than that. And I found this particular actor to be absolutely charismatic. He kept me glued to the screen. I found him whimsical. I found him dramatic. I found him just to be someone to keep an eye on. He made me feel so much. And every time we've done Indian movies, I'm like, oh, I wish Salman Khan, we got another Salman Khan, because he was the one that I've just been drawn to. I've warmed to Shah Rukh Khan. I didn't like him at first, but I've warmed to him now. And the other actors we've done, of course, Irfan Khan, who's not a part of the three Khans, but is a great actor nonetheless. I was shocked at his Indian movie presence because he was a goofball. While in
a couple of
Hollywood
weeks ago,
movies, he's very serious.
A couple of weeks ago, IRL, we were sitting down with Ryan's sister having dinner, and he was telling her about Bidu Barpa, and how, he was excited to see Irfan Khan in an actual Bollywood film, and the film opens with a scene of Irfan Khan, and it took Ryan a little while to realize, oh, that's him.
Because he was such a silly little guy. If no joke, here's how I would describe it. So the film we are watching today is more of a comedic affair. There's romance, but it's more light and fluffy than pretty much any other movie from India we've covered. I would say that this is the most upbeat, light. It's still got dramatic moments, not to undersell that, but I would say this is the one in which you would say it's a crowd pleaser in the most, like, it's hitting you for a light, fluffy, good time.
Look at the poster. It's like, woman is happy and guy is, smiling while gesturing towards her.
But if Irfan Khan was in this, he would play his friend who's dressed up as an old man for 90% of the film. Like, that's how Bilu, like his Bilu performance at the beginning of Bilu was very much like goofball, like this guy was a goofball.
That character did feel like he was from that village.
Yes, he did. But we have returned back to India. Earlier this year, we did Lagan, which was a very prestigious movie to the point in which it got a nomination from the Oscars themselves.
And that one had the member of the three Khans we haven't mentioned the name of yet, Amir Khan.
Amir Khan. But how about you tell everyone? We've done all of this talk and preamble about all of this stuff, but how about you let everyone know what the general premise of this film is?
Sure. So this one is a 2015 film, Prem Ratan Dhan Payo.
Yes, thank you.
I almost said the wrong one again. This one is about, and it's similar to a couple of Shah Rukh Khan films in that there's a dual role thing happening. Our lead actor Salman Khan plays a humble village actor and a prince, soon to be king of a certain region of India. And the story of them coming across each other is that the one who's not quite the main character, the king one, is about to be crowned. He's about to get married, but he's got all of these, family issues. He's got two sisters that he's estranged from. He's got this brother that he gets along with, but that brother is plotting something against him. And one day when, he's at his lowest, basically an assassination attempt happens on him. He falls into a coma. Then our actual lead character that Salman Khan also plays happens
the one we're introduced to in the film.
Yes. He comes across his, immediate, right-hand men, and they see the resemblance and they come up with a plan to have him impersonate the prince, to make it seem like, everything's normal, to proceed the wedding along, because the prince seems to only have 4 days before he'll be out of the coma. And then the plot of the film basically is about, this actor man learning about the intricate life of the prince, all of these little details that we weren't privy to from the introduction section of the film, and basically repairing all of the broken relationships that he has. And
the central quandary that you get with any of these impersonation films, especially ones that go into romance, is not... I will say this before we get into the deeper elements of the film and spoilers, but it really goes out of its way not to live in the liar revealed bullshit that I was expecting from the general pitch of this. Because with this impersonation film, you're waiting for the, liar revealed, shaking of the finger.
It was all fake. You weren't the person I thought you were.
But what I was going to say is, will he, and how badly will he actually fall in love with the princess that he is wooing on behalf of somebody else? That's the classic thing that you get from this movie. And I will say with that and the liar revealed, the interesting twist on it that I will push people to give this a watch for is, in comparison to even other Bollywood films and or just American movies, it's got more of a nobility to it than I was expecting. I was expecting it to wring it out for all of the drama, but it really held off and was more noble.
Yeah, I kept thinking the word principle. Like, it's really held to its principles.
Yes, it's a very... it's just got a very... a sweet nature to it. Again, I come back to this being the most, pleasant film from India we've watched. It's not to say that this doesn't have any challenging or deeper moments to it, but
it's got an action climax.
It does have an action climax, but what I would say is this film is definitely one in which it can be solved by hugging it out. And there you go. Everyone make sure to give this a watch for yourself. It is available, at least here in Australia, on Amazon Prime.
Yep.
So if you can find a copy of it, please give it a watch for yourself, because now we're going to get into more of the details of it. I've never seen this movie, of course. I've never heard of this. I'm sure you had mentioned seeing it back in the day, because we would have started our podcast, right? By the time you had watched this in the cinema?
Maybe. We started the podcast late 2015.
Yep.
So it might have been...
a month ago.
Yeah, it might have been shortly before, but if it was much later in the year, then maybe.
But I was so just thrilled to bits that we were getting another Salman movie. I did not look up anything. You told me the general premise of it, but even then, I was thrown for a loop when this movie had modern technology. I thought this was a period piece.
Okay,
with the way, because when you say to me, this is a movie about a prince who's trying to get a princess, and he falls into a coma, and a vagabond actor man from town has to play him. I'm thinking, this is a period piece. But then when they're on motorcycles
and all the Apple
buses,
product placement,
and they're wearing sunglasses,
they're having a sword fight in the garden, like a lady pulls up her iPad.
Yeah. I was shocked, because that's how little I knew going in. I thought this was like a period piece, maybe because we watched a period piece just previously.
Yeah. And
many of the Bollywood movies, Indian movies, have played around with being in different time periods as well as just contemporary. But that threw me. I was like, holy shit, okay.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Both films I've done this year have like a king.
Right? A sultan. No, I'm joking, of course. But I was taken aback a bit at the start of this. So I was thrown for a loop, and I was really worried, because the first 15 minutes or so, 20 minutes maybe, pretty much all of the dialogue was dubbed, like 80-yard over. Because most of the first 15 minutes it's songs. There's a long, lengthy opening song, and then we get a little bit of a break, and then we get another song.
They did that multiple times, yeah.
But a lot of the dialogue was dubbed over, and I was worried, this is going to be a case of, and I know this happens in Indian movies as well sometimes, but very much in European markets, where everyone's just speaking their own dialect or language, and then they're just dubbing it over afterwards. That does happen.
Yeah, we've talked about that, I think, before.
And I was worried, is this going to be the movie? Because I was seeing Salman Khan, and he's dubbed himself over, and I'm like, oh no. But then I don't know, maybe I got used to it, or maybe the movie just did shift normally, but that was my immediate first impression was, oh no, this is going to be so distracting for the rest of the time. But I got over that hump overall. But tell us about your experiences seeing this in the cinema, your impressions of it, and, here we are now.
So I also got thrown for a loop, because I honestly forgot so much of this film. I had the, I guess, general goings on of the film completely wrong. I remembered, the Palace of Mirrors? that you see twice in the film. In my head, most of the film was set there. They were all living there as a family.
That's in the backstory.
And that most of the film was about the brother getting along with the two sisters.
Oh.
In my head, that was like, oh, yeah, the glass palace. I just remembered, it in the middle of that river next to the waterfall. And just that setting was the main thing that I would always think about when I thought back on this film. And so when it only appeared, in a flashback and then the climax at night, I'm like, oh, wow, this is actually barely in the film. And, it focuses a lot more on this, romance plot going on. So, yeah, there are a lot of surprises there. And the beginning of the film, we do spend a lot of time establishing the backstory of our main character, Prem. And, yeah, I'd forgotten he was an actor and all that. So, it obviously led perfectly into, what the plot of the film actually ended up being. But once it got rolling, I'm like, oh, yes, I remember all this. But, yeah, that experience of realizing, ooh, I had this film completely wrong in my memory was quite fun. I laughed a lot during this film. Salman Khan, he can be really funny.
I laughed a lot too. I thought this was a very funny film. I will say that I don't... Okay, so I want to say this. I like the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a good movie. It's sloppy. It's very messy. It meanders all over the place. But I was entertained. This is lowbrow. It's very much like, oh, I know all of these beats of the story.
Yeah.
And not just because, everyone knows this. I haven't been ingratiated enough in Indian movies to understand all of the beats, but this is just traditional storytelling beats. We're going to do this. There's one or two little wrinkles, but not game-changing stuff like an Om Shanti Om or even a Bilu. This was standard, fair entertainment, and I can tell you 100%, I would not be as forgiving of this if it was not for Salman Khan being the centerpiece. If this was another actor, I don't know. He guided me through so much of this because, in all honesty, I don't even really have much of an opinion on the side characters. They were fine, but none of them really stand out to me as oh, this great bit of this. It all comes back to our lead actor here. So this film it's all over the place. It's a messy movie, but I liked it. I was thoroughly entertained. This was cheesy, dumb, fun. I laughed a lot genuinely, but also ironically at the movie. When Salman Khan keeps fucking flipping his scarf over his shoulder, I'm like, you shut up. But then I remembered he kind of did that in Sultan, and then I looked it up. Oh, he just does scarf stuff all of the time. I'm like, okay, that's just him. He loves scarves.
Maybe he's sponsored by a scarf company.
I don't know. Maybe he thinks that's what makes him cool. He's a big guy and he's a scarf. I don't know. And the sunglasses. He's always got the sunnies and taking them on and off. I remember in Sultan when he became evil Sultan and he had the sunglasses. These exact sunglasses.
The 2 minutes of evil Sultan.
Yeah, exactly. The opening 2 minutes of the prince seeming evil. Did you get that vibe when we first met the prince? I thought, oh, he's a villain.
Yeah, he was introduced really you couldn't see him at all because he's in the shadows because they're holding out for the reveal of oh, it's Salman Khan.
Which was a genuine twist because apparently it was not revealed that he was going to be doing a dual role in this film until it just... there it was. There was no promos of it being a dual. Even look at the posters. None of it shows. Oh, it's two of him.
Yeah, that's true. And that's another thing. Thinking back, I'm like, oh yeah, he must have also done a dual. I think we even had that confusion last week when I was recommending it when you mentioned oh, it must be a dual role. I'm like, yeah, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Does the prince appear much in this? And he appears a fair bit at the beginning and end.
Yeah, and we get the double up of when he's looking at his body and they're green screening him.
Yeah, but yeah, you're right. That introduction to the prince, it's very dark and sinister, and it contrasts with the words that he's saying because it's he is saying noble things. It's no, don't praise me, but praise my country or something like that. Praise my land.
It's the mustache. It's him giving a scowling face. It's the moody lighting. It's the angles, these Dutch angles. There's something sinister. And I thought, oh, he's going to have to play this kind of malevolent prince character, and he, a main character, is going to start fixing things by being just a sweetheart, and that's going to be like a conflict. And you could argue in a way it kind of is that, where the prince is on a personal level a little bit distant from everything. Like him and the princess have some conflict existing because he is a very emotionally distant person, it seems, from what we gathered from the conversations she was having about him, and about how he never really like tries to please her.
Yeah, and when we do hear that about him after the fact, it does make sense with what we learnt about him when we were following him, because he has, a whole monologue about how, I want to be close to my family, but we're living in this huge house and they're all so far apart from me, and my sisters are estranged from me. So it's like he is aware of his flaws.
But he's also someone that may succumb to them too often, because if it wasn't for our main character, he would have killed his own brother.
Yeah, when we
he's
see him,
quick to rage.
Yeah, when we see him at the end of in the climax, like he is, basically like a berserker character.
But I did have a good time with this. I laughed a lot. My favorite song, if we can just say that, was the football song.
Ouch!
Where they barely played any football. They were going out of their way to show as little of it as possible.
Well, it was dance choreography.
It was a lot of just dancing around and then occasionally throwing a football at each other. It was great. Yeah. Like, it was fun.
On a fun level, I really liked the one where he was writing down the complaints, because they were using the security guards in the choreography, and I thought that was really fun. Like, when he was riding on their back and they had to move, and they were like, you could see their feet like slightly shuffling so they could, like, move along. When they were all kneeling and writing.
That was great.
It was a good visual.
Visual touches like that. So what do you want to talk about? Where do you want to leap off from?
Yeah, building upon what you said before about how, a lot of cliche things happen in this film. Yeah, you can really see where a lot of things are going. Like when we had the soccer scene you just mentioned, cutting back and forth between like the sister's estate and what's going on there versus what's happening here. You're piecing together what's happening and kind of just watching it play out. But it does work because the film just feels so very playful. And you even have, you have a lot of build up and payoff of this film that's really satisfying to see, where especially with the Bapu character, who I'm sure you have a few things to say about.
Just a few.
I don't know what, but we'll hear. He very firmly establishes a lot of things to our main character, like that you have to do. Okay, you've got a vow of silence. So when we see the vow of silence being broken, it's very fun. And in this one, it's like, you're going to say a very long speech in pure Hindi. And then that's broken on a visual level, where he's like walking up with a soccer ball under his arm and like runners. And then he's like, he's outright saying like, you're expecting me to do a long speech in pure Hindi, but we're going to do soccer instead. And like, he's slowly winning everyone over by like poking at their egos. And like his love interest is like inside woman who's doing it on the female side of things. And it's very fun to see play out, even though you know what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think it all ties back to, although we are aware of the beats of this and how they're going to play out, you're right. There's a lack of self-seriousness to it. It's the fact that there's a self-aware levity. The film is looking at you and saying, we're not taking it too seriously. We're not going to pretend like this is some dramatic reveal. We're just going to have a grand old time. Now let's go play some football. And that's often the case with this. I was expecting there to be, because the film is melodramatic, there is a lot of melodrama, not to say that there isn't, but we come back to that principled nobility angle that feels very, very much of another culture.
Yes.
As we come back to talking about often with Indian movies of what in this particular Indian movie do we find to be something that is very Indian or very different to our own culture, and or how we often see movies tell stories from cultural perspectives. Because Australian culture tells stories that are very similar, but in a very different way to, say, English movies, and same with English movies and American movies. But with Indian ones, we always go back to like this movie was really leaning on this thing in particular, and that's what I kept coming back to. Is you say principled, and I agree with that too. Like we come about at the same point where there's just this certain level of just gentlemanliness to it all, where instead of having the lie revealed, where the classic is, you're not the man who I thought you were, and I fell in love with you. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you. And he's like, oh, what have I done? I have done an immoral thing. Because that's how Western movies always do it. Like, I don't know why, but whenever I think of liar revealed stuff, I often think of just like children's films. But then I think, well, even adult movies do it too, and in the same way. So it's like condescending even more, because you can forgive, say, Shrek doing it. But if an actual adult drama does it, and it's the same way that fucking Shrek does it, it's kind of aggravating. But this film, I don't even know how it avoids it. It just doesn't really do it. It just, I don't know. It's just the way it does it. It's just like, I can't even pinpoint in my memory the moment where she finds out that it's a lie. Like, because it's just so offhand. It's just, the film's not interested in that being the central drama point. It's got other motives in mind.
I think it's just a mix of what we've already talked about with, the film having a sort of casual nature to it, or, easygoing nature. And also just how strongly they establish how moral our main character is, from the beginning. Like, he's the charismatic narrator at the theater who punishes the theater goers who are, mucking around. He's constantly, has a constant reverence for the royalty. Like, he's, enamored with the princess because he saw her at the thing that he was helping at, flood relief, I think it was, or some sort of relief.
Oh, yes, that iconic scene where she comes down in a helicopter.
Yeah. And his motivation at that point is like, I want to deliver, this tin full of donations to her personally. And throughout the entire film, and when he's given the job to do, the Bapu asks him, how much do we have to pay you? And he says, you don't pay me a thing. I need to do the right thing.
Which does reflect Salman Khan in real life with this movie, apparently. I was reading that because he's friends with the director, has referenced that he actually went out of his way not to charge any fees for himself in this movie, and that's like a big deal, apparently. So
there you go.
What you're saying, though, it's about selflessness.
Yeah.
The film is about selflessness in a lot of ways, because we know with any of these type of movies, oftentimes the characters bumble their way into this, and maybe they're in over their heads, or they have some selfish grand reasoning. And you could definitely make that case for Prem, in which he personally is attracted to the princess, and so to be able to play this part would be great. And also, he's an actor, and this is a part to play. But throughout the movie, from the beginning, middle to the end, it keeps this overriding, this overriding belief and principle that this is purely a selfless act. He's doing this because it's the right thing to do. So when we get to what you would expect to be the dramatic conflict of, you lied to me, it's not going to bother doing that, because the film knows from our viewpoint, and it brings that into the characters, that he's not lying. He's doing the right thing, so why bother wasting 20 minutes umming and ahhing about if he's a liar when we know he's not? Like, yeah, it is deception. It is deception, but it's for purely good reasons. And as we see him do, just inherently, but also actively, he's trying to repair things that are broken in their lives because he's a good person.
Yeah, he's not given 100% of the information, so a lot of scenes actually, end up him discovering something new about the prince, or, the context of this whole family, and he's like shocked beyond words, and he has to think about what to do next. Like, you have the scene, which starts off very funny, where he barges into the sister's house, takes her by the shoulder, and like leads around like, I got you this, I got you this, I got you this. And this very strict character that we've seen a few times is just lost for words. But then the scene ends, with a very dramatic confrontation, where they learn new information, and he defeated, goes with what she says, like take everything back.
It was really well done. There's so many players in the story that really help bolster the messaging of the movie. Because although I talked about this having a lot of familiar stuff, cliches, tropes, and they definitely are there, there's also things like the liar revealed and so on that don't go exactly to the formula. And I think characters like the antagonist's brother, or even, what was his name, Bapu?
Bapu, yep.
You are going in with a certain type of character in mind. And the film even has those actors playing them that way, but our main man, Prem, he's just not going to play the same beats of those the way that we expect. Like Bapu, for instance, he's the serious character of the movie.
Yeah, he's like the Zazu kind of character.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I could see that. He is the serious person. He's the one that's basically given the main character the mission statement, and he's there to make sure he follows that mission statement because that's how important this is. Babu's the character who is the one that believes this is really life and death stakes. Everyone else, not so much. Like, even if they say they do, they just have such a devil-may-care attitude, but he is the one where you could see this being an antagonistic relationship if played differently. And even when he gives the big dismissal, we don't need you, send them back type of deal, Salman Khan he reacts so naturally, just pleasantly to this information where it almost deconstructs this type of narrative device in these movies where Babu kind of realizes, why am I even bothering trying to do this part of the story when this is such a good person in front of me? And I love that relationship. That was one of my favorite relationships in the film because you have fire and ice. You have Salman Khan is playing this high energy, goofball, silly boy, sweetheart, and then you have Bapu who's playing this is like a serious drama, and they perfectly blend together in my mind.
It's a perfect relationship for both genuine drama and really good comedy.
Yeah, because the comedy from Bapu is he's a straight man, of course, and even when you say straight man comedy, there's a certain type of performance style that comes with that, but he's still not playing that. He does genuinely feel like he's from another film, but in a positive way, not in a negative way. But this is a positive time in which you could say they feel like they're from a different movie.
Yeah, he is. He's not playing it serious. He's trying. He wants to play it serious, and he wants everyone else to do that as well. And seeing that not go his way is where the comedy comes in.
And the drama.
Yep. And you have a lot of setups where, he's in a situation where he can't talk frankly to our main character, so he has to go along with it. It's like, what about your vow of silence? I broke it. Hey, you remember when I swam naked in this river? You better, or else I'll say that you did too. It's like, those were the days.
He's the typical butler character that you see in these things, the attaché, the aide, even the mentor. But he was so great. And yes, let's talk about it. I saw this actor for half a frame at the beginning of this. Like, there was a quick shot of him, super quick, like just like that. And I said aloud, "Is that the dad from Bend It Like Beckham?" Remember, this is 12 years later.
Mm-hmm.
Bend It Like Beckham, if I remember, was like 2004. This is a good decade or so later. He has a full beard in Bend It Like Beckham, while in this he has just a moustache. I knew from half a frame, I'm like, that's the dad from Bend It Like Beckham.
Because you grew up with that film, right?
I grew up with that movie.
Yeah.
And even if you haven't grown up with that movie, his performance in Bend It Like Beckham is one of the standouts of that film. He's so good in that movie.
It had been I mentioned this to you on, when we were chatting online about it. It had been a long time since I'd seen it. I've only seen it for the podcast. I hadn't seen it before or since. So I had to rewatch a couple of scenes of him, and it didn't all come back, but it mostly came back. Like he's very dramatic in that film and very sincere.
and I saw his face or side profile, or whatever, for half a frame. I'm like, that's the dad from Bend It Like Beckham. And then I said, well, maybe it is. I don't know. We'll see if he comes back. And I ummed and ahed about, will he have a prominent role in this film? Because I know he's an actor that's done a lot of Indian movies, but he's also done a lot of American and British films. I've seen him in a television series as a recurring main character in an English language series. I've seen him in Bend It Like Beckham. So I was happy that he was one of the most prominent roles of the movie.
Yeah, he's fourth bill. His name is Anupam Kher.
And he brings exactly what I've seen him do before, but that's not a negative thing because he's such a presence. He brings this gravitas to his roles. When we did Bend It Like Beckham, he's the serious person of the movie, and humor comes from that because he's the shaking of the finger dad. But then you have all of these wonderful scenes where he opens up and he reveals parts of his past, and he lets her go to the game, and so many wonderful things. And you get the fun of him being like the stoic Indian man at the sideline watching the football, and then he's like teaching them all that stuff. But he brought that element to this movie again as well, where I so much is different about his character, but so much is the same. And I thought that he was the thing that was the glue of the movie. Like, Salman Khan is the heart, he's the driving force, but if you didn't have that character and that actor playing, this, what is basically just this, quote unquote snooty palace aide, I don't think the movie would work nearly as well without this actor there giving it his all. Like, I loved him. I thought he was great, not just because he's the dad from Bend It Like Beckham, but he just wrote a tone that I latched onto.
It's kind of funny because that main character is established as having like a buddy, a buddy character, and when they start the whole acting plan, he's given a role of just, you're going to be a photographer who's going to be at the wedding, at all of the pre-wedding events, and your motivation is da 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 da, and you're also going to be keeping watch on one of these three members of the suspects. And he becomes basically just a side character from then on. Like, he's still present every now and then, and he has a role in the action climax.
An amazing role.
But yeah, he kind of gets replaced as like the buddy by the Bapu character.
Yeah. That dumb theater friend of his does have an amazing running gag, but it's so background that I think it's a detriment, because it's such a great gag, which is he starts method acting this elderly man role so much, like he kind of forgets that he's not this elderly man. So then when we have the big action climax where he steps in and he's like, fuck it, I've got to be me now, and he rips off the stuff and he's like, yeah, it's me, motherfucker. I cheered a little, like, yay, because I was noting, like, he's really getting into this, as many people called him, the uncle role. Like, they just kept calling him uncle all the time. And he's like, yeah, I'm uncle. And like, he in scenes with the bad guys, teaching them how to kind of be better bad guys. Like, that's a little recurring gag where he's kind of like, no, do this. He's getting too in the role. And I thought that was fun, but I wish he was a little bit more in the forefront so that landed better. But I was appreciating that as just a running thing throughout the movie. Like, if you watch it again, keep track of that character and how you see him over the course of the movie kind of lose himself in this old man he's playing. It's really dumb, but I like that kind of dumb humor.
Yeah, there was one scene where it was the two main villains were like, whispering to each other, and he was sitting behind them, and he like doesn't really join in on their conversation, but he like interjects something.
Yeah, and they're just like, oh yeah, you. They don't care.
It's just so naturally there that they don't even really react to it.
No, not at all. So I want to talk about the princess. I'm not familiar with this actress. We haven't seen her in anything else before, right? She's
I didn't really
a bit more of a new presence, but
Sonam Kapoor, is that one?
Yeah, I liked her. I grew to like her. I didn't have much of an opinion about her at first. I think the film keeps her at a distance deliberately to draw you in, because she is a character that our main man doesn't know anything about. He has just this image of her, this heroic image of her descending from the sky. And so when he actually starts to know her, and there's a lot more dramas brought about because of what the prince has done, it makes it still hard to know who she is, because she's coming at it from an aggressive angle of like, she's not thrilled about what's going on. She herself is distancing herself from the prince because she's just not happy with what's happening here.
The film uses her to introduce that whole recurring thing that I mentioned before about like our main character slowly learning about the context of this prince's life, where he walks into this situation having his own personal reverence for the princess, admiration for her, and when he finally meets her, she's got these big sunglasses on the whole time. She's in, character as the princess, humble, noble, waving, smiling. They're eating dinner together and she's happy, and then, she, not over dramatically, but she kind of breaks down, she opens up. And you can see, while he's still in the middle of the whole vow of silence thing, he's just looking at her like mouth agape, realizing like, oh, this person has depth to her. That she's hurting, and the person that I'm playing as, he also isn't really as much of a caricature as I'm, not only playing him as, but as I've been told to play him as. I have to step up and do something about it, and that's why, a very funny moment, but also very powerful, when he decides to break the vow of silence. He just calls out for Bapu really loudly, and then Bapu comes in, reacts, and there's like, "Wait, aren't you doing vow of silence? I broke it." It's very funny, but also assertive.
Their chemistry was great, not just the actors, but the characters themselves, because we have to overcome challenges that have been laid before the film has started. And so that was more enjoyable for me rather than the film itself putting down the challenges in their relationship, if you know what I mean. Like, everything that he has to overcome has already happened before the movie has started for him, relationship-wise.
Yeah.
We're not watching, oh, he fucked up. Like, we're not watching a thing where
he's learning about a fuck-up.
Yeah, exactly. We're not watching, for instance, he is pretending to be the prince. He makes a faux pas that the prince would not do, and that repels her, and now he has to repair that. That's not what this movie's doing at all, which is what I thought it was going to do. I thought it was going to be the case of she was in love with the prince, and now he has to fumble his way through and do almost like Dirty Rotten Scoundrels type shenanigans.
Not only is that not what the film's doing, it's doing the opposite. He is fixing it with faux pas.
And she finds it charming. I loved when she caught him eating food that he's not supposed to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And he has to make up a thing on the fly about like, oh, the doctors say I'm not supposed to, but, the power of the mind. And that becomes like a little catchphrase of their romance, of power of the mind,
and it's
they
already
say it in a very exaggerated theatrical English way. When they speak it in English, it's very over the top.
And I've already talked about it, but that whole soccer scene, like they're just partners in crime, where it's like, hey, we need to play this like we're humble village people.
I don't know if this actress has worked with Salman again, but I would love if they have, because I thought their chemistry was really good. Because
I haven't seen her in anything else.
She matched him. She wasn't silly herself, but you could tell that she can play. Like when we're in the soccer stuff and we're revealed like she's in on it and she's doing that stuff. She's got her own tempo to the playfulness, and I know this sounds silly, but I'd watch an action heist movie with those two, where they have to where they have to plan out a caper together, or their rivals planning out things. That would be fun.
Yeah, you're right. That would be fun.
It's always amazing. I just looked up this actress. I was just scrolling through her IMDb, and it's always amazing when you see just something, and I go, I actually kind of want to watch that. Like, that's how that kind of happens. She's in this movie a few years later. I don't know how to pronounce this, so I'm bad at Indian, but it's Neerja. And the poster is her with
Neerja?
It's a poster of her with a gun directly pointed at her face.
Apparently she plays Neerja Banot. So
and it's a story. Yeah. It's a story about a woman who had to protect the flight of passengers after it was hijacked from terrorists. And that sounds. And I'm like,
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to watch that. That seems interesting. That seems like an interesting movie. It's highly rated. Yeah, I liked her in this. I want to see more of her. And we haven't had, correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't had a female, like, led Indian movie, right? Where, like, the main character is a woman?
That we've done on the podcast?
They've all been
No.
guys, right? It's all been the Khans, primarily.
That's true. That is true.
Now, you've seen some more than I have, and I'm sure your mum may be even more deep in this, but are there many? Like, I'm often aware of, like, the lead actresses being, like, how they are here, the foil or the romance for the guy, but are there many? Because I just saw this, I'm like, oh, she's the lead. Well, that seems interesting. I haven't seen that before, honestly. We haven't watched any on the podcast where the lead is a woman.
That I've seen, I'm not sure. The most that I can think of is ones where they're, like, equal with a male.
Yeah, like, Doom 2.
Doom 2, yeah.
If you had to ask me what's the one we've had where the strongest, like, lead female character, would be Doom 2, in my mind.
I was going to say, I remember when we did Sultan, the female lead of that was something that really impressed you.
I liked her a lot in that too, but it's Sultan.
If you've worked with Salman Khan, so far Ryan's got 100% hit rate.
It's true. What else do you want to discuss? Is there anything more about the movie itself that you want to get
itself.
into? Did you still love the House of Mirrors?
Yeah, it's still a really good location, and I forgot how close it was to the waterfall too. Like,
yeah, it's a little dangerous, guys.
When you first see it, and they're like in a rowboat going towards it, I'm like, oh, geez, that looks really.
I don't know why. Maybe because of the green screen. The green screen in this movie is fucking insane. I enjoyed when he was on, like, the little moped with his friend on the back at the beginning, and there was an insane green screen, but. That house, I know it exists in a physical play, but I thought for most of the time it was hovering in the air because it's just the way that they shot them over it, and it just felt like this is a sky base. It was just so...
This isn't a period piece, Ryan. This is a futuristic film.
A fantasy film. This feels like that place feels like from another dimension. It's just so abstract and weird, and like the backstory feels very mythical.
Put it in a Revolutionary Girl Lieutenant.
Yeah, but like even the backstory of it, like this place was where we met it was the middle ground location, and then when they separated apart, it basically shut down, lights turn off, it's like it's dying and falling apart. That feels very fantastical. The house itself, like the mirror house, feels very fantastical in comparison to the rest of the film, which feels just very rom-com-y.
It's the life of the rich and famous, Ryan. But
go on.
There was one part that threw me off a little bit. So there's a scene where the brother character, who I guess is thought to be the main villain until the end, where it's his aide. He's finishing up a phone call with him, and the aide's in a very dark and shadowy room. Mm-hmm. And I happened to glance at the corner of the screen. It said "smoking kills." I'm like,
yes, I saw that too.
I'm like, is there and I had to replay it, and like, oh, you can kind of see a cigarette smoking from an ashtray.
Yes. Is that an Amazon thing?
I don't know. It really confused me.
I haven't watched enough things on Amazon because I know a lot of these streaming sites now have these weird, like, watch out, smoking's bad stuff. Like, it's so bizarre when I watch a show on something like Disney Plus and the rating will have, like, nudity, sexual references, and smoking. It's like, I don't know if that's the same as the others, but maybe I'm just, old now, where back in the day we didn't have it called the R word. We just used to say the word. But now you have warnings for the R word and smoking, and it's just I don't know. I saw Smoking Kills and I wasn't too sure if that was an Amazon thing or if that was just a weird... Because it's in English. Like, it's in English, Smoking Kills. It's very strange. But it never happened again.
Yeah, I was looking at, like, is anyone else smoking? And I don't think anyone else was.
No, but...
The one who was smoking ended up being the main villain.
I had a weird complaint, actually, about this movie, and I wanted to get your brain working on this. I like the choreography.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't the most elaborate, but I liked it. I thought it was, like, the dancers really put a lot of effort into it. No offense to our leads, but you could tell the disparity between them and the dancers, like the dancers they hired. Like,
Yeah.
Salman, sorry, buddy, you just don't have it compared to the person to the left of you. He's good, but I've never seen this before, but I felt like a good portion of the songs, the choreography just didn't match. The choreography is really good, but didn't match. So, for instance, I'll bring up, I think it's the second song, the one where he's in the market, like, smelling foods and whatnot.
Oh, yeah, they just got off the bus.
They got off the bus. It's like second or third song. This elaborate dance set piece, like people in the streets kicking and writhing around, and we even go away from the dance to like someone in a store and you see them in the background still dancing. But the song itself is really low. It's like really low energy, really slow, but they're dancing like this is an Om Shanti Om, like elaborate. And that happened a bunch. That happened a bunch where they had these dances where I loved the dances. I give 10 out of 10 for like, they put a lot of effort in, but I have to mark it down because they didn't fully match the tempo and rhythm of the songs. Not all the time, but more often than not, I was noticing, this dance is a lot more like high energy and elaborate than the songs themselves.
Bit of a dissonance.
Yeah.
I wasn't so much noticing the dissonance, but I've already mentioned this way earlier in this episode. I don't know how often I've seen it to where a musical sequence will be interrupted by a scene and then like the song will continue, because I've definitely seen films, and I could even bring up Main Huna as an example, where like in the middle of a song a conversation will happen and like the song will dim down and then we'll cut back to the song. Like I'm thinking of the song that you really liked from Main Huna, the very first one, where it's like dancing on the campus and there are cuts to Shahrukh on the train, saying very ironic things about like, I bet my brother will look just like me, whereas you're getting cuts of like motorcycle, long hair, and then he's building upon another thing and then more about this, handsome looking young guy. But this one, I think we even had at one point like a straight up like 3-4 minute scene where it's like, oh, that song's long over, and then oh no, the song's still going. It's back.
It's an interesting thing, and we often talk about on the pod. I bring up like what makes a film masala or not, and we've had our back and forth conversations about like this one is and this one maybe less, and I feel like this is on the lesser scale because although there's comedy here, and although there's, I don't know, I didn't feel like there was much of like that like tonal shift. I feel like it was pretty locked in for the entire run time. Like it stays true to its premise. It doesn't veer off into too much that Western movies wouldn't either. Like, yeah, we get a big action set piece in the end, but like I didn't feel like that was like how we saw with other films. Like we always bring it up, but like Om Shanti Om is like primo in my mind of like, this is what a masala film is. Like that's what I use as the tentpole of like, this is what it is. This one, I think, like, again, I bring this up. If this was made as an English language Hollywood film and they kept basically the same stuff and it was a musical, you wouldn't be thinking, oh man, this is such a total, like all over. I thought it was pretty like clear cut. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, it did kind of feel like it was grounded in a certain tone, and like whenever something would kind of veer away from that, it would be noticeable. Like I'm thinking of when you're introduced to the concept of like, oh yeah, these three, are potentially the villains, like the secretary, the brother, and his right-hand man. And then very soon after that, you get a scene of them where they're basically like discussing outright their motivations. And they have very dramatic acting where like the brother will say something and then it'll cut to him like leaning against the bars and like dramatically talking about like how wronged he feels and how he was betrayed and how he's motivated. Now I'm giving you this car. It's the first decision I've ever made.
They had to try and make us care about him in some way and they failed. I didn't give a shit about the villains in this movie. I apologize to the main Hunar villains. They seem much more interesting than these fucking losers. These guys sucked. They were like, I don't even say the downside of the movie. They were non-factor. I look, honestly, the movie doesn't need villains. Could it just, I know there's the reconciliation family message, but like, for the inciting incident of the Prince Swapperoo, I could have just had him, he got injured in some kind of sporting thing or whatever. But like, there are villains, and I kept forgetting that there are villains because they don't really try to stop a main character all that much, and they actually, relatively speaking, find out pretty quick what's going on and just kind of deal with it.
Yes, it does a similar thing to the main Hunao film where, yeah, it's a dramatic irony thing where we're in the know about, what the villains are doing and the heroes don't. But it doesn't quite cut back to them as often. And when it does, it's usually just like a hushed conversation, and like some of the most dramatic things they do is like off screen, like, oh, they killed the 80-year-old guy.
And they did not do a satisfying enough job in my mind of really cementing the brother and brotherhood of these two characters. So when there's a betrayal, I don't really feel the sting of it because we had one scene of them just dueling around, having some laughs, and then the betrayal. And then when we have the let's hug it out reconciliation, here's your brother, don't you love him? It didn't really do much for me because I didn't feel much for the brother character anyway. And maybe you could argue, well, that's what the middle chunk of the movie could have done, in which a fake prince realizes the relationship with the brother is fractured and he tries to fix it, but that doesn't really happen either.
Yeah,
he barely interacts with the brother.
I think the film would have been serviced a little more if the brother would just be in it a little bit more and try to play into a sense of normalcy. Like, I remember, keep going back to the soccer scene, like we have that whole scene established and then scenes going, and then eventually it cuts back to the brother and he's just sitting alone, being kind of mysterious or chatting on the phone or something. It's like, you stick out like a sore thumb in this scene. Like, you should be more, not that he's doing like a stealth mission or something, but it's like, if you look at that, it's like, oh, there's something weird about this guy. Why isn't he pretending to, enjoy the soccer match or something?
They could have leaned into that and made it more. They could have leaned into that and let us see a glimpse that he feels alone. And although he's doing this nefarious thing, he himself feels like he's going through the motions and the motions of it, and he's having to put on a role, which is ironic because our main character is doing that, but he's actually being real. Isn't that fun? That's a fun connection, and that's why at the end it would have been an easier pill to swallow if, although the prince believes he has a great relationship with his brother, the brother doesn't feel that way, and our main character has discovered that, and he has formed maybe not a bond or a connection with the brother, like the evil brother, but has a understanding of how the brother doesn't feel connected to the prince. So when we have the three-way conversation at the end, I can actually buy the redemption of the villain, because at the end of the day, it's one of those ones where it's like, it's a movie.
Yeah.
I have to say, it's a movie.
There's a little moment at the beginning of that, nighttime scene at the Hall of Mirrors where he's drunk and he stumbles and lands on Salman, and then Salman hugs him genuinely. He has this reaction. It's I could feel like this would have, there is a poignancy to that, I feel, but I feel like it needs to complement more that this character has given us prior.
Now, the film is not well regarded. We're praising a lot of stuff about it.
We're praising a 1 out of 10 film.
And I have a lot of issues with it, as I said, but maybe because I've now got to this point where I'm just having fun. There's been other ones we've done that have annoyed me more, like Main Hunar is loved. I didn't like it. I wonder if I revisit it, how I would feel. But this one, I can agree. I've read some of these reviews and comments, and I said, oh yeah, I can understand that. But as someone who's maybe not as ingrained in this, maybe I just don't have that frustration. For instance, in our world of things, there are certain actors that you may enjoy, but you've seen them just do movie after movie after movie after movie of the same shit, or just kind of subpar stuff where maybe the film itself is okay, but you are just so not on board because you're tired of seeing, say, Michael Fassbender, a great actor. He hasn't made a great film in a very long time. So when he makes a average movie now, it feels lesser because I'm annoyed that he's not making great films. He's a great actor. He doesn't do great films anymore. That's the type of thing. I wonder if that's the thing with Salman Khan, because I read reviews of Sultan in comparison. one of the big praises of Sultan, and remember we talked about this was a return to form for Salman Khan. Sultan was, and it felt like a breath of fresh air because he was doing dramatic work for a change. He wasn't just doing fluff. He wasn't just doing schlock or action in Sultan. Well, this movie, it seems like, from what I can gather from some of the comments review-wise and just general viewers, people are just kind of tired of seeing Salman Khan.
Salman's doing another one with this film.
He's just doing one of the films. And one of the recurring things I saw was, I'm just sick of seeing Salman pull his silly face. And that I can understand. We have actors like that we've watched over the years in Hollywood movies where it's like, I'm sick of, like how people are sick of Jack Black being Jack Black right now. There's that pushback, right? Where people are like, oh, Jack Black is Bowser. Oh, Jack Black is Minecraft Steve. Oh, maybe that's what Salman is in India, where it's like, at one point he was great for people, but it's kind of like, you're just doing the silly face. How do you feel about that?
No, man, maybe that's the case. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't actually say it this episode, but, my mom's a very big Salman Khan fan, and she was, I think, seeing almost all of his films at this time and saying to me, like, look, the films aren't that great, but he's always just so enjoyable in them. So maybe it is a cultural sensibility as well.
And you sound a bit, when you said like 1 out of 10 film, like you're shocked by this, or at least taken aback?
I remember before I recommended this film, I knew that my mum and I remembered really liking it, and I knew that it had low, ratings online. And I remember having a look, I think it was like a day or two prior to recommending it after the Pat Labor episode, and I don't think I filtered the IMDb reviews at all, but it was just like 1 out of 10, like 10 times in a row or something. It's 1 out of 10 after 1 out of 10. I'm like, I don't remember this film all that well. I'm pretty sure it's not bottom of the barrel rating that you could give it.
It's like a 4.4 on IMDb.
Yeah, the average is 4.4, which, fair enough, maybe that's more understandable, but like 1 out of 10, that's something you reserve for like actual bottom of the barrel Z-grade shit, right?
Yeah, and so I read some reviews on Letterboxd, IMDb, and press reviews, and it is very much a case, from what I can tell, of people just sick of Salman doing his shtick, but also that the movie is just, its morals are way too simple. Like, one of the reviews on Letterboxd is, moral of the story is, if your brother tries to assassinate you, just forgive them. Like, that's the moral. But one I can't keep, like, one's like Diwali porn, that's a review. There's ones that are like, I don't know exactly when I started to like Salman Khan unironically. And that's the thing, like, Salman Khan is someone's ironic like, but I unironically like him. But I saw this comment come up a few times on IMDb. Mm-hmm. And these reviews came out at the time of the movie, so I was a bit curious. I was like, raised an eyebrow, where people were specifically pissed off at Salman Khan himself. And they were very anti him as a person. Not as an act, not his performance, but as a person. And then I found out something, and I don't know the full story of this because I did some light digging. I'm sure your mum may know, maybe not. But in 2015, he was convicted of having hit and run a homeless person and killed them.
Okay.
And so he was very much not liked at that time.
I know that he's got a lot of controversies around him.
And this movie came out pretty much on the heels of him being convicted for that. He was supposed to serve time for that, but then somehow it didn't happen. Somehow he Matthew Brodericked his way out of it. Mm-hmm. And think about that. I just said Matthew Brodericked his way out of it. You know what I mean by that. We make fun of that on the pod a lot. Like, Matthew Broderick has killed people, and he got away with it because he's Matthew Broderick. He did some drunk driving and killed people. And same with Salman Khan. He was out and about and he ran over a homeless person, hit and run. He got convicted and then he wiggled his way out of it. So it seems like some of the reaction from some of the people were just like disgusted at Salman Khan here in this movie being this oblivious little smiley guy, when in real life he's someone that you would possibly say is reprehensible
Yeah.
to some folks. And I didn't know any of this. I just know Salman Khan is like, oh, that lovable guy from Sultan. I really liked him. And now I saw this movie's negative reaction and I was like, I wonder why. And it's just a whole, like with anything, it's a whole slew of different reasonings, but a lot of them just keep coming back to people are frustrated with the lead actor, whether for personal reasons or they're tired of his career trajectory. And then you look at Sultan a year later, and it's the exact opposite case where it's like, yay!
I know that
He
was
did
Sultan.
fun shit, like a good dramatic movie. So
I know that was Sultan. There was one controversy where in the press release for it, because he had to, get really jacked for that film because he was playing a wrestler, and he phrased what it felt like at the end of a day of shooting or a day of like working out as I feel like a raped woman or something.
Oh,
like
that's
that.
right. You mentioned that. What a bizarre man.
Yeah.
What a bizarre man.
Like I said, if you go to his Wikipedia page, there is a tab for like controversies. I think he was charged for something recently, even.
What a man. What a man, but I still find him an enjoyable screen presence.
Well, you can't deny that, yeah.
I recommend this movie for people out there. It's not on the high end of Indian movies. There's plenty of others I would say are worth checking out. What holds it back even more is the direction is pretty flat, visually speaking. It's shot, it's there, but there's no great flourishes. Like the choreography is like when the dancing, it's the dancers are doing the work. The camera is just sitting there. Maybe it's panning from left to right. It's not really doing anything more. Like it's not really, you're not there for, it actually kind of reminds me of Sultan in that way, where Sultan, when it did the dance numbers, it was like, yeah, it's shot it well. The dancers are doing the things. The color of the movie is doing it. But like the direction itself is lacking in this film. It's doing it's performing the function, but not much else. I would love to have seen this in, say, even the director of Bilu's hands. Like that director did some interesting visual work with the musical numbers, even though I didn't love the musical numbers in Bilu. Like there was something more. Well, on this one, it's very flat.
Well, they hid the prince in shadow in his introduction.
They
right?
did.
Hey, when he was in the carriage, he fell asleep with the headphones in. The environment that carriage was in changed quite a bit between shots, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
It was like in a forest trail, and then it was like middle of the desert.
Then it was like a cliff.
And then it was on the cliff. Yeah, it was like, how far are they going? How long is he sleeping?
Very long.
It was very weird.
He actually traveled through the Lagan village at one point, and there was Amir Khan there waving, and
he went back in time.
He went back in time. He went to the future. He went everywhere. He went through Om Shanti Om, both time periods.
Oh, we did establish this is a futuristic film because of that palace.
Because that palace, yes. You recommend?
I do, yeah. I enjoyed this the second time, and like I had a lot of laughs in this film, so recommend that alone. And yeah, Salman, very fun, and Bapu, great foil.
Great foil. Is my time to recommend a film on this podcast, and I am also going to recommend a foreign film. Now, we haven't done many, remind me, if any, from France? Have we done French ones before?
We did a Christmas film from France.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that it? We did one from Belgium. That doesn't count.
Yeah. You know what? My second choice for this episode was actually going to be a French film.
Well, I am going to recommend a film called Delicatessens, which is by the same director of Amelie, which is a very well-known film. I'm sure if you would have even seen the poster. It's like of that woman with like a very rictus weird grin, and she has like a weird bob haircut or whatever. But we're doing their earlier work, Delicatessens, and so everyone make sure to check that out. I am very excited. I have this on DVD. Rachel got it for me. My wife Rachel got it for me a little while ago on DVD. We have an interesting history with this film, Rachel and I, so I can't wait to talk about it next time on the podcast. So everyone, please make sure to check this out for yourself. And Bartek, can't wait to hear your thoughts on this one. It'll be interesting.
Do Luc Besson films count as French films?
We haven't done any of his French language films, but I don't count them as much because he does them in Hollywood structures, the ones we've watched. We haven't done even like, I guess, I don't know enough. Like, would Leon the Professional count as a French? I don't know, because that has our boy. Does Just Visiting count?
Les Visiteurs?
Because wasn't that the same director even as the original? So does that count as a French? No. But
it's the French one that we did do was by that guy, right?
Because other than like saying Asian cinema, when you think, at least in my mind, maybe just because of like how people are, when you say like we're watching a foreign film, oftentimes I think, oh, French movies, but we don't often do them. We've done a lot of other places. We've gone out of our way to like. We haven't done many French films really. Like we've done I guess one or two, but not many.
I mean, I guess when I recommended Lucy, it would have been saying like it is technically a French film. But,
true.
Yeah. Although in the Just Visiting episode, I'm pretty sure our guest Mark II gave a like rating in French.
Oh, parlez-vous français? But thank you all so much for listening, everyone. Make sure to check out our social medias and our email. All of that is in the description below. So if you want to follow us or contact us, you can do so. We are taking your recommendations. So give us those. You can drop them in an email or in a comment on whatever platform allows you to do so. We have our YouTube. That's often where people comment. But we also have on just our Twitter or Facebook, there's a post there, or you can just DM us if you so chose. But I'm so glad that we sat here today and we got a second Indian movie for the year. Maybe I'll throw in one more. Imagine if I did. I have to think.
Well,
I need another.
Have you ever recommended an Indian film?
No, I have not. I've never recommended. Well, I recommended Bend It Like Beckham, but
it was British.
There is a difference, though, of the family in that were Sikh.
Yeah.
While in this, he was not a Sikh. He was Hindu, right? Bapu?
Yes.
I think so. I'm pretty sure. But
the speech he provided was pure Hindi.
It was pure Hindi, but I'm assuming that. Maybe I'm wrong. Indian listeners, let us know. Am I wrong? Was Bapu actually Sikh in this? He had a different turban style than the other characters, so...
He was Jewish.
Imagine. I was worried that he was going to die in this movie, by the way. They teased us, and I was like, don't do this.
Instead, he just said very heartwarming things while in his bed.
Makes me think of Kung Pao. The heartwarming bed scene in that with his wound.
Bed. Oh, no, yes, you're right.
Yes.
Sorry, I was thinking of the scene where they weren't dying.
No, I'm thinking of when he's back and he's like rubbing his wound.
That was a funny scene.
Whenever I think of sweet bed scenes with old men, those are the ones I think of. Technically, Ryan, it was Tiger and Crane Fist, that scene. We'd also played...
Great film.
Great film. Fantastic movie.
Our email is spitandpolished@gmail.com.
For some reason, you looked me in the eyes after I just said fantastic in that way, and I was worried that you're going to make some Trump reference. Like, oh, by the way, this is our first post-President Trump 2 Electric Boogaloo episode. Remember when we first did this podcast, and the idea of that happening was a funny thing, and then it happened, and we're like, well, maybe it won't happen again. And then it happened again, Bartek. We're in a world where he got there twice. Will we cover... Oh, Bartek, I can't wait for you to not only pick a foreign Christmas movie, but somehow pick a musical one. Good luck. An extra challenge to throw onto that pile for you.
Fucking why can't 8 Crazy Nights not be American?